Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm super excited to share my next guest with you, Dr. Stephan Rechtschaffen. Stephan is a co-founder of the renowned Omega Institute in New York, one of the foremost yoga and meditation centers in the world, and one of the first in the US when it was founded in 1977. He's the author of the best-selling book Time Shifting, which focuses on our relationship to time and stress amid the quickening pace of modern life. And he's the creator, director, and visionary behind Blue Spirit, a yoga, longevity, and meditation center located in Nosara, Costa Rica. He's also a grateful husband and father to 3 sons, grandfather to 4 grandchildren, and a wonderful human being. So without further ado, I give you Stephan Rechtschaffen. Wow, Stephan, thank you again so much for being here.
Very happy to be here with you today.
Wonderful. So on some of the other podcasts that I had listened to your interviews and your story leading into this, you mention or you tell the story of your formative years where your grandparents moved to the US from Eastern Europe. And growing up, you watched your parents striving to make it in America, which they did, and created a wonderful life for yourself and your siblings. But growing up, you felt that you had a gene that you would follow your own path, wherever that may lead, not necessarily sticking with the mainstream. And so at the end of medical school, a parasitology professor gave you the opportunity to travel abroad, and you found yourself 8,000 feet up in the Himalayas with an Indian saint who had previously been imprisoned with Mahatma Gandhi, who was sleeping on the floor of a local temple. And I understand that that was a formative period for you. I wonder if we could zoom in for a moment on that period, and I'd love to learn a little bit more of what that experience was like and what you learned from him.
Well, first I'd say the way I got there is I had been in medical school, and I remember coming out of the whole hippie movement. I walked into medical school and I looked around and I realized I wanted to practice preventive medicine. And I realized preventive medicine was dealing with an outbreak of malaria somewhere where thousands of people or a million people are affected. But otherwise, it was waiting for someone to get sick and then taking care of them. And a professor came up to me and noticed I was a bit different. And she said, "How would you like to go and work in a hospital up in the, where do you want to go?" I said, "How's the Himalayas?" And she said, "Great, I can make that work." So that's when I found myself in this place in Mussoorie in northern India where the Tibetans were just coming across. And so being in the presence of these people who had had to leave their lives, many of them quite sick, I was really moved by this. Was mind-blowing to me. It was totally opening my life. And a Pir Vilayat Khan, a Sufi teacher, said, "You have to meet Bhagwan while you're there." And so Bhagwan was this being who was a professor in his early life, went to prison with Mahatma Gandhi, and then lived on the floor at the temple, only about a 15-minute walk from where I was. So every day I'd work in the hospital, and then I'd go see Bhagwan. And what was so moving about being with him was just his really simple presence. He had renounced his life to just be in the presence of God. And to be honest, I never had any experience like that before. I had some sensing of it. I had done Zen meditation and so on. But this was really something that changed the direction of my life. And so Pir Vilayat Khan, the Sufi teacher who had introduced me to him when I came back to the States, he asked me if I came up to me in a large group. And I had just gone there to see him. I was sort of one of the younger people at the time. This was that was in the early 70s. And he said, he had this group, and he says, "We're going to set up a community." And he said, "And he's going to do it." And I sort of
pointed at you.
There were all 70, 80 people in the room, and I didn't know anybody there. And I think it upset a bunch of people that this
Wow.
upstart knew. But somehow Pir Vilayat knew, and I knew, so we created a community. And out of that community, I started to have to put businesses together. And amongst the businesses we had, from an organic bakery to a fruit stand to a Volkswagen repair shop because we had 100 people living there. We had to have an income source.
Oh, wow.
What really started to happen is we started to do teachings, spiritual teachings, and spiritual in the sense of real life teachings. So it was health stuff. It was how do you live your life in relationship? And we had great people coming, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in those days, and Deepak Chopra in those early days, and people like that who would come. Ram Dass was on our board of directors, Joan Halifax. So all of these great spiritual leaders wanted to come
Mm,
to something that wasn't just about the money, but a gathering of souls.
yeah.
And so for me, I feel incredibly privileged that I was given that role and was able to set up Omega, which still exists in Rhinebeck, New York. Now,
Yeah.
so I just to tell you a little more of that path is that Omega still only operates in the summertime. And so, because it was a camp that we had got, an old Yiddish cultural camp that we had bought. And so I had to figure out what to do in the winter. So I started running programs in the Caribbean. And I loved it so much that I thought, I need to do this year round. And that's when I traveled all around the Caribbean and I finally coming to Costa Rica. There was something, and there still is something. Costa Rica is the only country in the Western Hemisphere with no standing army.
Yeah.
And so being in Costa Rica, you feel that in the people. And especially in these days when there's so much war, there's so much people going after each other. Here there's nature.
Hmm.
So I feel incredibly blessed that I get to run this organization here called Blue Spirit and be in the midst of nature and have people coming feeling like this is a safe place for them. This is a place that allows them to open up their heart, open up their soul to
Yeah.
what really matters to them. So that's
Yeah.
what we do.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's truly a remarkable journey, and yeah, what a blessing to have lived your life.
Lesson. Yeah. And I think sometimes I think of it as the left-hand turn. It's that many people get caught in the way things should be. And what happened to me is I started going off into directions that most people wouldn't dare do. But after a while, when you start to see, I can do this, I can even fail and get up and do it again,
Yeah.
or I can learn how to do it. So after a while, I started doing these things that I just trusted would work, and they have, and I'm
Yeah.
grateful.
Yeah. Yeah. I certainly want to loop back around onto that. But if I might, could we take it back to just for a moment to the time with this gentleman in the Himalayas? And one of the things that stuck out to me that you said was that he was there being with God. And was did he introduce you to your own relationship with the sacred, I guess, with God, if you like?
He deepened it.
Uh-huh.
So in other words, I think in this path, one sort of gets on and you don't know exactly, but you know there's something more than just making money or becoming famous, or there's an inner life that wants to be fed. And so I think many of us have that, but then we hold it off because I'll do that later because I'm going to take care of my family, or I've got to make money to do this, or I've got to becoming somebody. I need to be as Ram Dass used to say, he said people will go into somebody training. And so, truthfully, the whole deal with the spiritual path is dropping all of that. So when I was with Bhagwan, here he had been a professor. He had been a leader in the movement of Satigraha with all of these other people. And yet, when I met him, he was sitting on the floor of the temple by himself, not looking for anything else, just from his perspective, being with God. And that was so moving to me that there was nothing he really wanted.
Yeah. What does it
And
mean to
that,
you? Sorry, what does it mean to you to be with God?
well, I'm not somebody who uses the word God much. We're doing that right now, but I can even tell you that this has been a long, long journey, and I'm only in the beginning still of the journey, as we all are. So I've done Zen meditation. I've been um, in India doing this kind of work, Sufi work, and so on. So it's all about exposing the inner life and trying to understand what is most precious and most precious, what are we here for? And I can tell you an experience that I just very recently had that actually blew my mind. And one is hearing these days about the dark retreats. Have you heard about the dark
Yeah, yeah,
retreats?
yeah. I think they do them in your part of the world, if I understand. Somewhere in Central America, maybe Costa Rica, that you can go
So,
there and
yes,
be in the
I
dark
just went,
for a long period.
yeah, I went up to the States to do it, and I only
Okay.
did it for 3 months. It was my first one, but I loved it because
Uh-huh.
as opposed to the aspect of meditation where one is feeling like I'm sitting here meditating
Hmm.
or I'm meditating, what happens is sitting in the dark, it's not that I'm meditating, I'm just present.
Hmm.
And after a while, it's very different because it's not this, not doing a mantra. I'm not doing a bless. I'm not doing anything. I'm just present in a way that I must say I don't think I'd ever experienced before.
Hmm.
That all of this is step by step by step. And in fact, it was funny to me. Well, the second day of doing this dark retreat, and it's totally dark, and you even wear blindfold to make sure it stays dark. And at one point, I'm looking and I see my computer Yahoo with the Yahoo screen,
Okay.
and I'm looking at it for a couple of seconds, and then all of a sudden I go, wait a minute, what's that doing here? I'm in the dark and I have a blindfold on. There's no screen there. But I could see that what happened is my mind goes to it's addicted to that screen.
Ah,
So it was an opportunity to drop it. And a
yeah.
lot of meditation for me is not about saying sacred words. It's about dropping identity. It's about dropping this sense of me
Hmm.
to a sense of we.
Nicely said. One of the other things that just jumped out at me, as you were saying, Ram Dass would talk about becoming training. And I certainly feel like I've been in becoming training for a long time. As I shared with you before we hit record, having sold this business when I was 31 and thinking that that would lead to happiness and discovering that lo and behold, it didn't. And then trying to figure out, well, who am I to become? And then another part of what you just mentioned was doing or being what we're here to do or be. And so is there a dichotomy there between like the doing, the becoming, and the doing what we're here to do? What would you say about that? Like, I guess there's a relationship there between the doing and the being. And I know that, in your book, Time Shifting, you talk a lot about that in our culture, we're very much human doings rather than human beings. Maybe is the answer somewhere in
Yeah,
there?
well, we are human doings, especially in this world now that goes faster and faster and faster. And we're trying to keep up with that. And so I do a lot of things. You do a lot of things. Here we are doing something.
Yeah.
The question is, can we also find the space, give enough time to there just be being? And
Mm.
something that just mentioned this dark retreat. One of the things that most stood out for me is in the couple of days after I did the retreat, I realized I had dropped my anger.
Wow.
And what's interesting about that is I remember as a child when we'd be playing baseball or punch ball or something like that, the rubber ball, and I would be the last one still arguing whether the person was safe or out. I
Okay.
had that, you know, go get 'em energy. And what I noticed is that this anger is what's consuming. You see what's happening in the world now? No
Yeah.
one is satisfied. Everybody's angry. And that has a lot to do, as I wrote in my book about time, it has to do with speed. So when one speeds up and then somebody swipes by in their car or whatever, we get immediately angry. Or we didn't get the right change and we would gyp for 15 cents. We get angry because anger is just right there in this world we live in. And it's really so. So what I noticed is right afterwards, I wasn't angry and I could feel this difference. I was just present. So there's no magic to meditation. It's just really allowing yourself. So it's not like there's a certain mantra you need to do, or there's a certain state you need to get to. That's the striving. And those beings that I've met who feel to me most deepened in their being are those who are just simply present. And that to me is, at least for me, that's what I'm looking for, is where there's no anger. When something happens, you're just present. There was the story, Ramdas told the story of a warlord in ancient China who was going around, and everybody had a bow in front of him. And he comes to this Buddhist place where everybody starts to bow, but the master of it didn't bow. And the warlord goes up to him and says, "Don't you see that with one swipe of my sword, I could run it right through you and kill you?" And the Buddhist teacher said to you, "And don't you realize that with one swipe of your sword, you could kill me right now?" At which point, the marauding chief bowed down at his knees. So it's that place where there's no fear.
Yeah.
We're going to die. How can that be with no fear? Things don't work out. How do we allow ourselves? And I'm not trying to preach about this. I'm trying to practice this. And I'm still early in the path, even though I'm getting quite old.
So
I'm committed to it.
pure presence, by the
Yeah.
sounds of it, is what you're pursuing.
Yeah.
And yet, I understand that you've taught a class for 20 odd years about manifesting your vision. And so that's a fascinating kind of, again, like a dichotomy potentially of how does one maintain that pure presence while simultaneously holding a vision for what they want to manifest and not get swept up in the gap between what is here now and what one has in one's mind's eye, and the gap between here and now and that desired future state, and the anxiety that can ensue when you start to think about or feel that you may not successfully bring about that future vision, or something might impede your progress, or if I don't just work a little bit harder, then how am I ever going to manifest my vision?
What's interesting about that is it depends how attached you are to your vision.
Yeah.
So an artist just draws or paints and does all of this, and is it going to be a Picasso or not? But you're doing it because this feels where you're drawn. So I'm lucky in life that somebody presented to me, "Here, this is a vision. Can you manifest it?" And so I got into learning how to manifest these visions and helping other people to manifest their visions. And that doesn't mean the vision is going to happen or not happen. I've fallen flat on my face, and it was one of the best things that happened, because I realized I was doing it too much for the money. And so what I do now, what I love about what we've created at Blue Spirit here, which is different than anything I've done before. And what I love about it is that people come here on this beautifully preserved beach, in this area in Costa Rica, where it's just absolutely stunning. And people say to me, "Do you want to make it larger? Should we do more of these?" I'm really content. I
Yeah.
really love what we do. And I'm open to doing something else if it calls me, like going and doing a painting
Yeah.
with for an artist. So somehow I have good organizing skill sets that I didn't realize I had. Somebody said, "Oh, you seem like somebody who obviously can do this kind of stuff." And so I've just ridden it. And the mistakes have been crucial. I've
Hmm.
learned more from the mistakes than I have from my successes.
Yeah.
And so I'm willing, as I say, to take the left-hand turn. I'm willing to go down a path that most people don't want to go because they they don't know if the numbers are right or people going to do it. I've developed a kind of trust from what I've done over the years. And when I came down here, people thought I was really crazy because
Yeah.
back in now it's Costa Rica, but back when I came down here to do this, people thought, "What the heck are you doing? This is crazy."
Yeah. So, how do you develop that sense of trust? Where does it come
Uh,
from?
I think I think what the trust comes from is trying and failing, and trying and failing, and trying and succeeding, and then being willing to let go and take a new step. As Damien Brinkley, an old author friend of mine, said, the problem is it's like in the trapeze where you're swinging.
Yeah.
Problems with it is that you want to let go and grab on to the next one.
Yeah.
The problem with it is sometimes you don't see it. And
Yeah.
so do you to do it when
Uh-huh.
you don't even know if it's there.
Yeah.
So I need to trust because otherwise you say, no, I'm not going to take that risk. And then you're back. And then before you know it, swing isn't swinging so much. It's a skill set
Yeah.
that you have to develop in the same way that I have a skill set in health and longevity, which is I read a lot of information.
Yeah.
We do the different programs, and then people find that it's really useful.
So what's the first step in deploying that skill set? Like, I imagine it's attuning to like an inner voice of some kind as to like to find the knowingness, to find the direction, that the swing that you're hoping will appear when you let go of the one that you're currently holding on to. Is that right? Is it like tuning into the inner voice?
Yeah. What it is, I think, is that most of us, and as I was talking a little about medical right now, most of us think that we're going to make these decisions in our mind. Now
Mm,
understand that the cells, the 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 brain type cells are not just in the brain. So in the heart, are you tuned in? So in the same way that we go, hey, this is a great idea. I think this is going to work.
mm-hmm.
The question becomes, how do you feel about it?
Yeah.
Deep down. So
Uh-huh.
the one project that really went bust, I remember driving to it. And I'd never done this before. I'm driving the car, it's about 2 hours from Omega in the time. And as I'm driving, and I'd never done or have since or before, as I'm driving, I took my fist and I banged it into the steering wheel and said, Stephan, don't do this project. And what was fascinating is I went ahead and I still did the project. And the project failed, not because of the project, but the financial conditions of the world at that time took a big downturn and everything. And I went bankrupt. And I have to say, it was one of the best lessons of my life because I knew this,
Mm,
but my greed made me go forward, or my invincibility made me go forward.
yeah.
So you always suggest to people, if you're doing something, how do you deeply feel about it?
Yeah.
What do you think about it? Both of those have to be present. And I see the world right now being, especially in this AI world, being caught up just in the thinking mind.
Yeah. Do you discern
And
between Do you discern
yeah,
between the heart and the soul at all? If you do you believe in that we have a soul at all, or is it more like the
you
wisdom of
know,
the heart for you?
I just don't know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, it's a mystery.
a lot of people who talk. I mean, I think we'll have a sense of soul. There's no question. Soul is something that really connects it. To me, soul is when it's the gathering of heart and mind together. That
Mm,
is who our soul is.
mm,
But what happens beyond to the soul, I'm just here. I don't know.
yeah. Coming back to one of the threads that we were on earlier, and this idea of like developing, pursuing, well, maybe pursuing is the wrong word, but like um, developing, deepening our relationship with pure presence, and all the while holding the vision for something that we want to bring about in the future. And then I noticed that a word that you've used is contentment, and that you feel content now. I wonder when you arrived at contentedness, and was it, was it recent, like after you set up Blue Spirit, or did you have contentedness earlier? And maybe is contentedness the key that like to, you also mentioned not being too attached to your vision. So I wonder if that's the key to being able to uh, hold a vision for the future while not
Mhm.
losing joy in the moment. Would you say?
Yeah,
What do you think?
good question. Well, you see, I contentment is also, it's not you're either content or not content. So all of these things are in varying degrees,
Right.
clear. And so these are the practices to become more content. And so there are times where you wonder, oh my God, where did my contentment go? Or how did my anger rise? Or how did my disappointment, how did this go this way when I expected to go the other? Um, the remarkable thing to me about the spiritual teachers I've been around that I have greatest respect for is when things go wrong in terms of the way we wanted it to be, there's not the kind of breakdown that most people have. So it's like if you go bankrupt, you go bankrupt.
Right.
If you go, I went bankrupt once, I didn't like it, but it taught me, okay, I can live through that.
Hmm.
So it was a great lesson. I don't want to do it again. So, well, I'm more aware of what that means. Or so it's in the same way as even the simplicity of driving a bicycle or a car. If you get into an accident, you learn. So we're all in this learning process, and it takes a life to learn it. So even I mentioned Ram Dass a number of times, but when Ram Dass had his stroke, I remember at the time, right afterwards, him saying that he sort of expected, and he realized that when the stroke happened, he wasn't ready for the stroke or this being his life.
Okay.
So here was somebody who was teaching other people, but as he talked later on, and as I spent time with him later on and visit him frequently, he would say he was stroked. And the stroke was, it allowed him. So sometimes he's what we consider negative things, kind of
Hmm.
like I want a stroke. However, if you learn from it, so we've been teaching meditation to so many, he went deeper in his practice as a result of it. So many times these things that we don't want to have happen,
Yeah.
that that's our teacher.
They're all an
And that,
opportunity to go deeper. Yeah.
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 And that to me is so I've experienced not a stroke, but I've experienced things that I wasn't necessarily ready to see that happen. But this is life. And if we can take the good and we can take the bad, and right now we're in my wife and I and my family, things are in a very grateful space of being here in Costa Rica. But it's not that it's not without problems. It's not that it's without things that arise.
Yeah.
And those arisings are also our teachers.
Yeah.
How do
From
you be
this,
okay?
from the spiritual perspective, then, like, if adversity is the opportunity to transmute that into deeper spiritual wisdom, is there ever, I guess, like, can one then essentially have the outlook that they'll almost pursue adversity in order to transmute and deepen their spiritual practice. Eh,
Yeah, I get that.
Like
The funny thing,
the more pain that you have is the more potential for uh,
well,
transmutation.
see, I don't think they have a, a deep inner awakening requires you will go and beat yourself up. So,
That's
or be
reassuring.
beat.
That's good because also like as a parent, right? Like, I mean, I know for me, some of my deepest, I guess, like aha moments or awakenings or deepest kind of like profound understand or yeah, spiritual, I guess, lessons have come through pain. But as a parent, you don't want your kids to suffer, right? But you do want them to get to a state of inner peace. But is it, I guess, like, is it necessary to essentially, yeah, be bashed around the head before you can recover and appreciate it? Or,
Yeah, I think it varies. You know, we're all born in a different way and we come with a different set of who we are. But it appears to me that that kind of pain, if we can allow it and not just push it away, but really take it as, see, when something happens really good to someone, they go, oh, I'm so good. And so, can we be okay with things that are painful to us and go, there's a lesson there? And so, learning those lessons, I think, allow us to not get into those situations again. And I'm continually coming across that because if I take certain risks, sometimes they don't work out and then I get anxious or something. I'm like everyone else in that way. But the degree to which, when things go adverse to me now, they don't bother me nearly as much as when I was younger. They don't bother me feeling, oh God, I'm a failure. I don't have to go through that. I've been through that already. Like
yeah,
this is just the way it goes. It's dark at night. It's sunny during the day. It rains, it storms, and then all these different things. You oh God, it's raining again. I'm so pissed off that it's raining again.
yeah,
That gets you far.
I still struggle with that. The town that we live in is the windiest city on earth, Wellington, New Zealand, and yeah, when we moved back here from Barcelona, which doesn't have that problem, and in fact, you know, has a wonderful climate, which I loved. I remember moving to Wellington and sort of being reminded of the serenity prayer of, you know, having the wisdom to recognize the things that one can't change, and using the wind now as my spiritual teacher.
It's beautiful. And so you love it there where you live.
I try to, but I'm still coming to terms. You know, I haven't mastered the art of transmuting the frustration with the weather into pure equanimity and joy.
Let's face it, there, no matter what beautiful place you're in, there's always something that just grabs you and go, oh God, not this again.
Yeah, a fly in the ointment, right? I've noticed that too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And nothing perfect. And I think that acceptance of it not being perfect
exactly.
is frees us. All we're looking to
Yeah.
do is just free.
It's a
That's
reminder
what
to not strive for perfection, I guess, or not to like defer happiness and peace and equanimity until conditions are perfect because they seldom are. And if they ever are, it's, you know, as with everything, fleeting, right?
I mean, the people in our world now, looking certainly like coming from the States, of people, trying to become the next billionaire and whether they can become a trillionaire, like, is that serious? Is like, is there a place where are you satisfied?
Yeah.
Because that kind of push for that is the madness of our world.
Hmm.
Because that to have that means there's a whole segment of our world who doesn't have that, and they need that
Mm.
for their health and their home and their children and so on. So we have moved into a state where this egoic realm of I am the greatest is somehow going to bring happiness. I am the richest, so that's going to give me something. And I don't look at those people as feeling content because there's this kind of avarice, there's this kind of I need more. I
Hmm.
need to be I have to have more jet planes than Jeff Bezos, or
Yeah.
what the crazy thing is. That I can't believe that. They're happy at times, but I don't think they experience contentment. I don't know, but I don't think that's what brings contentment.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. It's hard to know. Uh, how do you think we can go about affecting change in the world and getting to people like that? Because obviously, to have people who already are on the path and are interested and they come to Blue Spirit and have a wonderful time, and then is it them going back out into the world and seeking to have influence in their own way? That we hope that will
Uh,
filter through and up and
Yeah, and we have to recognize, there's low tide, there's high tide. We don't have any control. I walk down to the beach and the tide is what the tide is. And some days it's one and some days it's the other. And so we are what I would consider, unfortunately, in a rather, uh, if I call it low tide kind of spiritual mental state. I mean,
Mhm,
this is not a good time on the planet overall for what is most healing for people.
mhm,
And yet, we humans have sort of gone through wars erupt and then they drop and then wars erupt. We've gone for a long time since the World War II, even before there were, so all of that time we have some kind of pressure that we're feeling between money and war. Very difficult time, and I don't think those of us in a more spiritually oriented perspective have the capacity to change that. All we have is the capacity to be here, accept it, and trust that it will change. Now, it doesn't mean you don't do anything if you're given an opportunity. And I have many friends who work in this field, and it's one of the reasons why we invite people here to Blue Spirit who are doing deep inner work out in the world
mhm,
and respect for them. This is a place where they can go internally. So to me, for my wife and I, this is the major thing that moves us the most, that we
mhm,
can offer where people can experience the way things should be,
mhm.
the way relationship to the environment around, to each other is one. So to me, is that going to make a major change? I don't think so. But if we can make a little change and little by little, the tides will change. That is the nature of it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to try and hold back a tsunami. If a tsunami's coming, and the tsunami's coming, and you can say, no, that's not how we're in a tsunami. This is our world, unfortunately. So how can I feel greatly privileged that I've been able to in some ways see this and create a place where I believe people are helped during this time. They can find some place where they can feel a deeper sense of belonging that sort of strengthens that inner life. Because we need to find ways to strengthen the inner landscape.
Certainly. Coming back to a quote that I think might have been influential, or a teacher who may have been influential on you in your early career, Pierre de Chardin. And he had a quote that someday, after mastering the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, we shall harness for God the energies of love. And then, for a second time in the history of the world, man will have discovered fire. What does that quote mean for you?
Well, we used his quote for why we called Omega, because Omega would then be the point where all life sort of merges into this kind of possibility. And so to me, the whole thing of that, like discovering that power of love. And I love the quote. It hasn't manifested yet. There's still time to go
Yeah.
because we just do not have enough. And it's not just love for people. It's love for our nature.
Hmm.
It's existence. It's love for the animals. It's love for, it's really very difficult. We're in this time of, a spiritually low tide.
Hmm.
And will it pass again? I do think so. Will it take another extinction? I mean, there have been 5 extinction episodes on the planet. Is that going to happen again? I don't really know. I hope not. I hope that we can, find some way for a truly all-embracing type of spirituality that doesn't have a brand to it. This is my religion.
Yeah.
It's your religion. It's my religion. We can get along just fine. When I was involved with Pure Light, and his whole thing was the gathering of all the great spiritual traditions as one, where we're united as one. And it's the same with the people. It's not that there are brown people and black people and white people and they're all separate, but we separate them.
Mm.
And that could be a problem. And no one solved it yet. Uh, I don't know where that will go.
Yeah. And so if you had one closing message for the world, I guess, what might that be?
Well, what strikes me the most in this time is for people getting in touch with their inner anger and how to let it go. A practice for me right now is when some little thing happens and I watch that reaction of anger, I'm looking to let that go. And I'll just tell you one little story about that came for me is that I had just come back from my dark retreat and went to and we have around us a lot of monkeys who live here because we don't have any electric lines, so they swing from tree to tree. And because some trees have been cut down, a troop of monkeys was going up onto our roof to go down the other side to get toward where the water was. And I was concerned, first of all, concerned for them, but also concerned they were going to knock off the solar panel, or they were going to break down the water system, just by crawling on it and stuff like that. And I watched myself wanting to throw, like I threw little stones at them to try and stop them doing it. And I watched myself getting angry at them.
Huh.
And all of a sudden it struck me like, I love these monkeys. They're great. How beautiful that I can live in a place where there are monkeys. And how can I make some other path for them? But my being angry at them is to me what happens in our world. We don't get what we want. We go to the store and they don't have it. And we get angry at the person who's trying to say, hey, we don't have it. Why don't you have it?
Yeah.
Or so anger seems to me the real problem of our time. And I think that is related to what I've written about in terms of the speed of time.
Hmm.
So really fast and something doesn't go your way, we immediately react.
Mm.
And that reacts to anger. And I think anger is what is creating the hatred in the world and the real breakdown of our better social instincts.
Mm. And so in that moment of pure presence and accepting what is that the antidote to anger, would you say, is acceptance?
Um, well, what's interesting is, yes, it's to me, just my own practice now, having just seen this, is just watching for it. The little
Hmm.
things I do without realizing that I do, that I want to really notice those. So when somebody says they were going to give me something or email me something, I don't get it, I can watch myself immediately go, what do you mean? It was supposed to go. So how do I?
Catch that.
So it's catching it. So these are the inner practices. So to say inner practice is meditation, yes, that's true. But how do we put meditation into everyday life?
Yeah.
Because there are people who go and do their meditation, and then they go out back into the world doing really shitty things.
Mm.
And it's not like you can, that's not okay. It's something that has to envelop our whole being. And that to me is the practice. It's not about, I need to be enlightened. I don't even know what that means anymore. It's not to need to be striving for.
Mm-hmm.
Just be kind and present and simple. And that to me, I really feel we're missing in life. And we're trying to make too much out of it. We're trying to grab too much. We're trying to get too much. And so this is what our world needs, how we can give. And that's where love comes in. Because when one isn't angry, one can have love for people.
Mm-hmm.
When you're angry, it's really hard to feel love.
Mm.
See it in all the relationships in the world. And so, I know with my wife, something goes wrong, she can get upset or I can get upset. Okay, how do we not let that get into something? And that's a practice to me for all of us. And the real thing, it's not the practice on the cushion.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm. Amen. Well, that's probably a wonderful spot to put a bow on it. So again, Stephan, thank you so much.
It's really nice to talk to you. And one day we'll get to visit where you are. You'll come and visit where we are in person.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks again.
Thank you to do this. Okay. Take care now.